Do you get a lot of advice about how to raise your son, especially after people have seen a huge meltdown or experienced his unpredictable behavior? Then you don't want to miss today's very special guest. They are going to share exactly what happened when they took that advice and what they did instead that changed everything. Grab your tissue and let's listen in. If you're tired of feeling helpless during your son's meltdowns and isolated by the stress it brings to your family, and you want simple steps to open communication, reduce outbursts, and bring more peace to your home, you're in the right place. Hey, I'm Cynthia, wife and boy mom. I remember having a child who looked typical, but spent hours falling apart at home. I learned how to stay confident during the stress of meltdowns and build connection without resorting to heavy-handed parenting. If you're ready to reduce the meltdowns and aggressive behavior and finally see that what you're doing is actually helping, then grab my hand. I am the mom you've been waiting to meet. It is the most exciting day for me today. I have been wanting to do this for absolutely years. And in my studio today, I have my husband, Wes. We have tag teamed through this journey with our son, and he is truly the best person that I could have to interview alongside me today. So welcome to the beginning of our story. I think we want to start by going back to the very beginning, even before our son is born. We have our own unique stories. And more than we would like to admit, how we were brought up, how we were parented, has drastically affected what we actually really didn't know how to navigate this story. Those first few years in the beginning when it really was very challenging. Wes, can you share a little bit about your upbringing and how that affected your experience in raising your son?
Yes, thank you. That is actually a very good question, because I really hadn't thought about it a lot, but it really made a huge difference, a huge impact on what I thought about when we were trying to raise our son in those difficult times. And I think back to the way that I grew up and the culture that I grew up in, the fairly strict, fairly not a whole lot of really being allowed to talk about what was happening for me as a boy, and really very strict, very, very religious household, where it was kind of the mom that raised the kids and the dad was there for physical support and providing the needs for the family and discipline. So for me, in growing up and having a very almost non-existent emotional relationship with my dad, I had fear, mostly around him. Not that he ever really raised a hand against me or anything like that, but there was just an intimidation. There was a fear of his words. It was harsh. It was not usually super kind. And so bringing that into my marriage and then into parenthood, I knew what I felt on the other side of kind of a harsh look or a harsh word. And so I didn't realize how deep inside of my psyche that was. And so when now I have a son who's having a hard time, and it looks like there's some disrespect, and it looks like, there's these emotions that just don't match the situation. Now there's something happening on the inside of me where, how do I deal with this? Because I look at the look on his face and I see myself, because I remember having that hard time. And I remember on the other side seeing a face that didn't have a lot of understanding for me, and I didn't actually really have a great relationship with the face on the other side, which was my dad. And so that really brought a lot emotionally for me, where I started to think about what's happening for my son. And I know that growing up, it's like, well, there's disrespect, and everybody knows what you do with a son or a child who's disrespecting you. We've all heard that, but that didn't enter into it for me. I think for that reason, being the youngest in a family of 6, myself, my perspective coming into this, it was just, when I looked at my son, having experienced what I experienced in my childhood, there was just a different level of compassion for him, and yet I didn't know what my involvement was supposed to look like to help him. And so that was kind of, it brought up a lot of questions for me because of what I had grown up with and all the unprocessed emotions that I'd had in my childhood and now as a dad. So it was just kind of the beginning of a lot of navigating through that stuff.
You talk about a culture, which I would say that I experienced that as well, where any opposition from a child is considered as defiance. And I know in those early years, it was something I think you and I questioned is this child actively defiant? Is he intentionally disrespecting rules or instruction or any kind of guidance? And what I'm hearing you say is the defiance was sort of a question, even in your mind in the background, but it wasn't what you wanted to partner with and agree with, that it was intentional from him towards you.
That is exactly right. And I'm just remembering a conversation that I had with my own dad about my son, actually. And in my heart, I was fully convinced that my son was not against me. He was not, he was not defying me for the sake of giving me a hard time. Something was happening. He was having a hard time, and it was coming out in ways that looked angry, in ways that looked disrespectful to some. It would have looked disrespectful. But in my heart, I'm like, there's something going on here. I know my son. This isn't what he's not doing this because he wants to give me a hard time. He's not doing this so that, shows me that he's being disrespectful to me. I was so convinced in my heart. And it was such an interesting conversation because I felt so convicted in my heart. It's like, even talking to my dad was just kind of ironic, saying, I know that he's not doing this to give me a hard time. There's something else happening here. And this is the beginning of a journey of actually processing through and kind of pulling that apart. And it's like, what actually is happening with my son?
Wow. And I'm sitting here beside you and I'm thinking back to those years myself, and it's so incredibly true that you can have that same thought in your mind all at once, or those two thoughts all at once, where I see what he's doing, and the outbursts, the intensity of his behaviors, expressions, words. I mean, his emotions are a roller coaster, which at times both of us went on our own roller coaster of emotions. And the two seem to exist simultaneously, okay, he's not doing this just to be against us, just for the sake of, causing this disruptiveness. And yet we're looking at his face and going, but yet why can't we get him to do what he even wants to do? Sometimes he was against those things as well. And I think we remember those years so very clearly when we're both trying to figure out, okay, what did we bring to the table in tools and parenting skills? Because nobody prepares you for this. We knew what we had seen, what we had experienced ourselves. In our own growing up years, we saw the things that were happening in our culture. But if we look back, almost 2 decades ago, we didn't have internet. We didn't really know, like, what do we even search. We heard from doctors. You're looking at, a severely autistic child. You're looking at antipsychotics, which we both said, nope, not going to happen. And then we were looking at this defiance, and we were able to find probably some article or book about oppositional defiant disorder. And we could see how it was similar, and yet we both were like, but if he's not doing this on purpose, then how do we go about helping him? And that's definitely what so much of this podcast is about, is when you don't know what to do and you're getting so much input from the people around you, your own parents, your own, immediate family. You've got experts chiming in, if you even have any experts in and around you. You've got school counselors, and we followed some of that. There was advice to restrain, physically restrain, to put him in a room, lock him in there, to take things away. And what did you see happen when we implemented strategies from outside sources?
Wow. Yeah. It's one of those learning curves where, you hear from the professionals and you hear their advice, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, we did try that. We did try restraining, but then it was like, oh, it didn't seem like it was working. But the professional says, you know what? No, you need to do that. You need to physically, because that was, at that time, that was the tool. And that supposedly that was supposed to work. And so we're just like, okay, we have permission from the professionals. Now we're going to go home and we're going to implement this. And it's just one example. School counselor, we will just restrain. We will restrain. And so, sure enough, soon enough, we have an opportunity to try this restraint. And looking back on it now, I think it was important for us to go through that as hard as it seems, because looking back at it now and doing that, literally holding my son, just because of the advice we had gotten, there is, everything pretty soon on the inside of me is saying, what am I doing? What are we doing? I know my son. And he's trying to let me know who he is as well. Even in the midst of this physical restraint, he's trying to tell me, no, Dad, this isn't working. And that was probably one of the biggest moments for me, where I'm realizing, okay, the experts do have some advice. There is some good advice out there. But it cannot trump what I know. about my son and what I'm learning about him, because I have connection with him. I have a way to connect with him. There is something on the inside of me that knows the right thing to do. And in that moment, that was not the right thing for us.
If you could see into our studio at this moment, both of us have red cheeks and tears welling up in our eyes, because it's even difficult to have the memories of the intensity in those moments. So I know that you hear that we are just about 2 decades in and past our journey in this, and yet those moments are still very, very tender, very raw at times when we think back. And so we are right there with you as you're going through this. And there's many other things that we've tried that we would love to share with you throughout the weeks and months ahead. And I think for now, we'll maybe kind of just turn to kind of closing this up, because I know you only have so much time as parents. I completely get where you're at as far as space and not having very many moments to yourself. And we are going to go through that as well. These are all things that is the struggle, because all your attention is on them. And you just trying to put one foot in front of the other. And so we 100% want to continue this conversation. But I would like to just ask you, Wes, is there anything that you could say to sum this up for today, or any lasting thoughts that you want to leave with them?
Well, one thing I think is super important is trusting that voice inside of you that is trying to speak loudly. Sometimes it's a really quiet voice, and I know that I sometimes allowed other voices to be louder than that voice. And I guess my biggest advice, would be just to trust what you know about your son, about your child, because you know them more than anyone else. You know them better than the counselor or the psychologist or the school counselor. And you have a connection with them, and there is no one else that can have that connection. So there is a trust where we can veto the other voices and lead with just tender confidence, knowing that what we have on the inside of us is enough. Even though in the moment, it might look like there's more questions than answers. It's okay just to wait on some wisdom from the inside, because it's there. Yeah, I mean, what we know, when we look at the hearts of our kids, and there's just something there that we can tap into.
Yeah, it's so good, babe. I second all of that, and as I'm hearing him speak throughout this, and even when we decided to do this, I invited him to come. I knew that this would be predominantly moms that are going to be listening to this, but I also know how important it is for you to hear from another perspective, and from somebody else that's in the home, and maybe you've had such similar experiences where there is the two of you who are trying to make this through, and you're feeling the strain and you're feeling the heaviness, and you've sourced out so many different options to try, and then when it hasn't quite gone very well, or it's something that you tried that didn't last, you're questioning whether you've got what it takes to do this. And I want you to hear from both of us. Yes, you do. 100% you do. And that turning point, that breakthrough, the transformation, whatever you want to call it, is there for you. It is coming. It is so unbelievably close. And it can be today. It can even be the shift that happens on the inside of you today that makes all the difference for you to have any hope, for you to be able to put an extra 2 steps ahead to make a plan that is literally going to change the trajectory of all of these moments going ahead with your son. So we are just going to kind of close up there, and we are going to come back on a few more subjects coming up in the next number of episodes. So look for that. And Wes, I just want to thank you so much for joining me here, and I'm excited to have you back.
I was looking forward to it. That's very good. Thank you.
Hey Mama, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and share it with a friend who may be on an uphill battle with her son's unique challenges? Also, please leave a quick review for the show on Apple Podcasts. It lights me up to know this podcast is helping you. All right, time to breathe and know that you have everything inside of you to courageously raise your brilliant son. I'll meet you back next week for another episode. Bye.